Before we crack into today's video, thank you. We are nearly at 25,000 subscribers, so please do consider hitting that red button and let's get there. Welcome, everybody, to what is also hopefully a fairly exciting introduction, although not quite as exciting maybe as hitting 25,000 subscribers. This is Humankind's Events update, or at least the first of what we've seen in Humankind's new events or scenarios system. Previously, you may remember, if you've been around the block in Humankind before, that we have seen some limited time events and challenges of different nature and description. Some built into the game with challenges like grow a city to 300 population for the Dia de los Muertos event, for example. We've had other more sort of broader challenges issued by the dev team as well, but now we've seen a new take. They've called it Scenarios, and for the avid 4X gamer who's maybe played something like Civilization, etc. before, that name might come with some connotations, and while some of those expectations or connotations will be true, others won't be. So in this video, I'm going to talk not only about this scenario, time cards below, but also more broadly about scenarios and events in Humankind, how this one's been designed a bit differently, and then finally I might also share some tips and tricks along the way on how you can beat the summer heat. Humankind Scenario number 1. In a blog post posted 6 days ago about Scenario Challenge number 1, Summer Heat, Cat9tails talks about how the Humankind team have taken a different approach and how it feels as though they'll likely try and take this moving forward, with player feedback probably taken into account. Basically, the scenarios will work a little bit differently from events in the past, to try and remove the FOMO, the fear of missing out nature of some of the limited time specific challenges and the specific sort of limited timing of really the overall nature of the event system. Now they've launched Scenarios instead, to try and keep things simple, but also try and challenge players, provide that extra step if you would like to compete a little bit more, dare I say, professionally rather than just playing casually. But also, they've enabled this to last through updates and through time, and I'll get to that in a minute. In the end, they decided to go for scenarios instead of challenges, to try and beat some of that fear of missing out, limited time goal aspect, while still providing something fun for players to engage with. The real Humankind early birds among us, the scenarios are slightly inspired by some of those, I believe, some of those early open dev-like scenarios that were sort of handcrafted for us. However, they go on to say that those handcrafted scenarios, like the open dev, do require a lot of work by their design team, which makes a lot of sense. So they're not simple things that can simply just be cut and pasted and pushed out necessarily. So they go on to say that while we can, and I quote, look forward to some big scenarios, they go on to say bigger scenarios we have, quote, in mind for the future, so we should look forward to some larger ones. This one appears to be a first taster. Now, how a scenario is different? Well, to get around that fear of missing out, what they've decided to do is release this one as a save file instead of an in-game event. Therefore, it's no longer tied to specific versions of Humankind game. For example, limited time event running for 2 weeks, and then there's an update 2 weeks later that removes it. That is gone. You can now simply, at the moment, the way that they've sort of crafted it is that you'll head to the Games Together forums, the official forums that are tied into Humankind. If you've unlocked your free content, you've probably already headed here and synced your account, so that won't be an issue. But you don't even need to, actually, because you can just jump onto the website, download the file, and then simply layer it in and place it into your game. From there, of course, you'll have the save file forever. So by using the save file, you can keep it. You can replay it as many times as you like, and it should last through updates, because Humankind is generally fairly good at allowing that. Although, of course, we will have to wait and see. With big updates and DLC and future changes, I can't guarantee that this will last. Speaking of updates, though, it is important to note that this challenge has been designed to fit with the battuta update. So you need to have the beta version downloaded on Steam to play it at the moment, and then, of course, because it's been designed for the battuta update, it will at least be future-proofed for that one. So we can expect to have this scenario playable for at least the foreseeable future, and a much longer time than previous ones. If you'd like to compete professionally, dare I say, in this challenge, you can by heading to the forums. They'll have the leaderboards available there, a Games Together badge as a reward, and you can publish how well you did in the scenario, pop back if you'd like to change it and update it too. So then let's talk about this scenario. Scenario 1, Scenario Challenge 1, Summer Heat. Scenario Challenge 1 Summer Heat is a downloadable save file that provides us with a map that's loaded into fast speed, so it's fixed at 150 turns as the end condition to keep scores comparable. So no blasting through extra turns, you are fixed at 150. You are coming up against 9 Empire level AI opponents. They are pre-built in opponents into the game, so they don't have any of the really insane, ludicrous abilities that some downloadable subscriber personas might have, for example. But they are custom personas from the dev team, etc. So they do have some personality to them. So keep in mind that they're not the most basic of plain Janes, and some of them will be perhaps a little more aggressive than others, or they'll find it a little easier to settle their outposts, that kind of thing. Overall, the Empire difficulty may also provide some challenge to many players. So my advice would be to trade as much as you can, to maybe find 1 or 2 early opponents to fight. That's some specific opponent centric advice for the Empire level difficulty. I'll share a few more tips as we go through for the challenge more broadly though. Speaking of which, the challenge itself, the map is a standard sized map. And as I say before, it's set on fast speed. The really interesting thing about it, though, as a summer heat challenge, is that in this world, because of course it's a preset world every time, because you're downloading a map, a scenario, if you will, water is scarce. With a desert spanning across the center of the map, and indeed it does, there are barely any rivers. My advice to you here would be to head down first and then to the right. Head down 2 territories from your starting position, spoiler alert, and you'll find one with waters that also has a nice natural wonder, Ha Long Bay. Then move along the bottom right and you'll find some more territories with rivers and maybe an opponent to fight there too in the Harappans. Mohenjo is their city that I'm eyeing up in this particular playthrough. Anyway, moving along, the rest of the features of the map sort of follow along with that barely any rivers idea. There are barely any lakes. There are barely any oceans. This is a giant Pangea with a little bit of ocean stretched around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. So, ocean-faring, seafaring cultures might not be quite as good, I think it would be fair to say, on this map. And because you're short on lakes and short on rivers, take my tips if you want to find some rivers, but otherwise, you might look to lean either really heavily in to try and fill that gap, or lean heavily out and try and find another way to harvest fame in this challenge. My advice, if you're simply going for the win, would be to try and choose the really powerful cultures early on. You might want to play as the Egyptians to take benefit of that industry, Harappans if you're going to find those rivers, or otherwise you might want to play around with some of the new militarist cultures in Humankind's Battuta update. Someone like the Goths and their ransacking, perhaps the Huns, even the Hittites, believe it or not, in the early eras, could provide you with some real benefits. Not only have they been updated in this version, but also because this is a fairly tight land-based map, land-based units, militarist cultures, they can spam them out with their ability to harvest your peasants and turn them into units and then upgrade them into pikemen. Honestly, a really viable strategy for a map like this. Other than that, hang around in the eras as long as you can if you're looking to submit a formal, more professional submission on the Games Together forums, because it's all about who can get the most fame. You'll also probably want to grab some natural wonders and trade. Thank you for watching. See you next time.